What is going on, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend, we have Noche UFC in San Antonio. We got a pretty decent main event in Diego Lopes versus Jean Silva. The rest of the card is a little bit low level, but there are a bunch of debuts, so we're going to see a bunch of unproven fighters show if they're really UFC level or not. We got some decent lines, so let's jump right into the picks and predictions for every single fight at the UFC Noche card. First fight on the card, we have the Ultimate Fighter finale between Rodrigo Sezinando versus Daniil Donchenko. And right off the bat, give me the underdog here. Give me Rodrigo Sezinando. The thing I like about Rodrigo is that, he is very tough. He is, very gritty. He just does not quit on himself. He can push a 3-round pace of just heavy wrestling, heavy grappling. He has really good scrambles as well. I think that Daniil, he's going to be the better striker in this matchup, but Daniil is going to thrive in the pocket. And I think that when they get close, Rodrigo is going to use that clinch to his advantage. He definitely also does a lot of chain wrestling as well. He's going to shoot that takedown. If he doesn't get it, he's going to keep going. He's not going to let you go. He's going to hold you up against the fence. And, he does get tired, but he kind of pushes through the tiredness. You see, really good scrambles from him, really strong fight IQ, really good awareness even when he is tired, which is why I like Rodrigo. And I think that, after a round of a pushing, the pace like that from the Rodrigo side, you're going to take the sting off the punches of Daniil. So Daniil's going to obviously be live for a knockout here, but Rodrigo is tough. Daniil could also probably win by decision if he does stuff a lot of the takedowns, gets it in space, keeps punching up Rodrigo. But I just think that, Daniil's pocket style boxing is not going to work against Rodrigo here. I think that Rodrigo's going to, push him up in the clinch when it comes to the pocket. And I think that he's going to win this one. Maybe on the cards, he could potentially find a sub, but, I think he wins this one on the cards. So give me Rodrigo to win this one. I think he's tough. I think he's gritty, and I think he has good fight IQ. And let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we got Alice Pereira versus Montserrat Rendon. And I'm going to go with Alice Pereira here. This is a very interesting fight just because Alice Pereira, very unproven. She's 5-0. She's only 19 years old. And that could prove to be a problem this weekend against Rendon, who's 36. That grown woman's strength. On top of that, Pereira is primarily a kickboxer, and Rendon is primarily someone who wants to get the fight to the ground. So I think that this could be interesting if Rendon just tries to bully Pereira around. But Pereira's 5'10". She has a pretty big frame as well. Not really much tape on her, but from the tape you do see she is kind of doing exactly what she needs to do, but it's just against very low level competition. So we're going to have to kind of see where Alice Pereira is at. It's going to be hard to tell, but so far she's looked good. She's done what she needed to do against a low level competition. She's definitely unproven, so there's probably a spot you don't want to be betting on at all. Maybe even if you do bet on this, the value might be on the Rendon side because, she has that path to kind of just bully Pereira. We haven't seen her ground game be tested that much, and Rendon's going to want to get this fight to the ground. But overall, I'm not high on Rendon. I think that she's kind of a busted prospect. Overall, not really good performance in the UFC in my opinion. So give me Alice Pereira here. I'm probably just going to hold off on someone like Alice Pereira, see how good she is, see where she kind of stacks up against this UFC level of competition. But she's going to be the pick. I think she does get this one done by decision. I think Rendon is still, very tough fighter to kind of put away. So give me Alice Pereira to get this one done by decision. Let's move on to the next matchup. Up next, give me Alessandro Costa versus Alden Coria. And I'm going to go with Alessandro Costa to beat Alden Coria here. I'm pretty high on Alessandro Costa. He's, a pretty good UFC level prospect. He's had pretty good performances in the UFC itself. He's coming off a little bit of a layoff, but overall, he's a technical striker, good volume, pretty strong, and has good takedown defense, which is all he's going to really need against an Alden Coria here. He's going to have to make sure that, he doesn't get taken down. Coria is a grapple first fighter, but this is a tough debut for Coria. I think it's also on short notice as well. So I think Alessandro Costa should have all the tools to get this one done. He's a massive favorite, and it makes sense. I think he should be safe to parlay as well. So give me Alessandro Costa. I think it's a late knockout here. Accumulation of damage, just landing a lot of volume on Coria over, the first round and a half, and then anywhere in the second half of the fight, I think potentially be called off. So give me Alessandro Costa to get the knockout. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we got Zachary Reese versus Sedriques Dumas, and this is a fight that, no one should really be betting on. Zachary Reese, just, pretty inconsistent, just really hard to trust, especially at these like minus 200 odds. He's almost always a favorite and pretty hard to trust in the majority of these spots. Sedriques Dumas, we know he has a lot going on outside of the octagon. Not sure how locked in he is on actually winning a fight. Maybe he is just here for a paycheck. He did just post a screenshot of there being like $13 or $16 or something like that in his bank account. You can look at that as two ways. He's just coming here for a quick paycheck, or, he needs that win bonus. He needs that double money. So a couple different ways you could look at that, but like I said, this fight against two fighters that are pretty hard to trust. I would say that Sedriques Dumas' durability is just something that's a real big concern. So I'm going to go with Zachary Reese here. I think overall, Zachary Reese is the more skilled fighter. It's just that Sedriques Dumas can land something big. And, Zachary Reese overall, I mean, he's just had some pretty lackluster performances within the UFC. So I'm going to go with Zachary Reese. I don't like him at -2, like 230 or whatever. I think that's like kind of stupid to play for Zachary Reese. I'm going to leave this one alone most likely, but he is going to be the pick. I think he just gets a finish here. I think Sedriques Dumas' durability is a little bit cooked, and he might just be here for a quick paycheck. So if Reese lands something, remotely big early on, I think Dumas might just go down, might just call it. So give me Zachary Reese to win this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Jesus Aguilar versus Luis Gurule, and my pick's going to be Luis Gurule here, but I think overall Jesus Aguilar is no slouch. He's a tough opponent. He also has the advantage in experience here. He has a bunch of finishes within the promotion. He's fought, decent level competition in the UFC as well, so he is coming in here, fairly equipped to pull something off, but overall, I think that Luis Gurule is a better striker. I don't think that Jesus Aguilar has the tools to get Luis Gurule to the ground consistently. And Gurule just doesn't look super lost on the ground in scrambles. So, maybe Aguilar does pull off a sub, but I think it is kind of submission or bust for Aguilar here. I don't see him holding Gurule down. I do see, potentially like some weird scramble and Aguilar does snatch something up, or he does one of his famous guillotines. But overall, on the feet, Gurule should win minutes. He should be the better striker. It shouldn't be like a wrestle heavy approach from Aguilar where he just kind of controls Gurule. Overall, Gurule could potentially knock him out. I'll say that, but realistically, Jesus Aguilar is very tough. He's not getting knocked out, but I think Luis Gurule is the more likely decision winner here. And then, Aguilar is going to need a submission moment to kind of pull this one off. I'd rather not pick the side of, just a submission. So give me Luis Gurule to win this one. But overall, Aguilar, pretty tough opponent. But Gurule should be able to get his first UFC win this weekend. Next fight on the card, we got Tatiana Suarez versus Amanda Lemos, and I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez here. She's a massive favorite, so majority of this is already priced in, but I think that her wrestling pressure is going to be too much for Amanda Lemos. I know that Lemos showed, a pretty good ground game and offensively actually wrestled against Yasmin Lucindo in her last outing, but I don't think that Tatiana Suarez is, going to let her do that. I think she's a level above a Yasmin Lucindo, so I think that she's going to be able to get Lemos down. Lemos is going to want to stay upright, stay in space, strike from distance, but I don't think that Suarez is going to let her do that. I think she's going to impose her game plan on Amanda Lemos. I think she'll be able to get the takedowns. She's going to get the control time. I'm not sure if she finds a sub. I know Lemos got subbed by Verna Jandiroba, but I think that Jandiroba has, slightly better jiu-jitsu than a Tatiana Suarez. So give me Tatiana Suarez by decision. I think she just kind of, racks up control time and wins that way. She is a massive favorite though, so, maybe you don't want to play it that way, but I'm going to go with Tatiana Suarez to run the cards, and let's move on to the next matchup. Up next, we got Claudio Puelles versus Joaquim Silva, and I'm going with Claudio Puelles here. I think that this is one of the harder fights to predict on this card. Both these guys are coming off, fairly long layoff. Joaquim Silva, man, he just isn't really like good at doing anything outside of landing something big and kind of getting a knockout that way. He is a jiu-jitsu black belt, so he's going to be able to defend himself against Puelles' best attack, which is the grappling, which is the ground game. But I think overall, Puelles in his last fight against Ziam, he showed some level of improvement in his offensive wrestling to kind of get the fight to the ground. I think that Puelles is going to, create a ton of scrambles here. On the feet, I mean, Joaquim Silva obviously does have the advantage of landing something huge, but I think that Puelles is going to kind of push the pace, dictate the fight. I don't ever see Joaquim Silva really doing that. I never really see him dictating the action. He's just kind of always a reactionary fighter. I don't think he's good enough to just be purely a reactionary fighter, which is why I think that Puelles is going to be able to get this one done. Like I said, though, both these guys coming off quite a bit of a layoff. The odds kind of indicate this as well. It's basically pick 'em, slightly leaning towards Puelles on the odd side, but in general, I'm going to pick Puelles to win. This is probably a fight that I want to stay away from as well. Now, next up, we got Jose Medina versus Dusko Todorovic. Probably the lowest level matchup I've seen in a while within the UFC. Two guys that realistically are not UFC caliber themselves are now matched up. The loser or both probably will get cut after this. And I'm going to have to go with, Dusko Todorovic here. The only thing that Medina has going for him in this matchup is the fact that, he is a very durable guy. So maybe he eats Todorovic's best shots and just kind of overwhelms him late in the fight. But in general, Jose Medina is just, not that good of a fighter. Doesn't really have much to offer. Dusko Todorovic, at least, has showed some level of, promise. He has had, a pretty terrible UFC run himself. His wins in the UFC are as low level as they get. I think you can add Jose Medina to that list this weekend, though. I think that he does beat Jose Medina. Jose Medina, winless within the UFC. His losses, the Gautier loss. I mean, Gautier is obviously an absolute animal. Loses to Zach Reese, which is meh. And then, before that, loses to Magomed Gaziasulov, who's also pretty meh. So that was in the Contender Series as well. So I think that overall, Jose Medina just hasn't showed any real skill in any point of the game outside of him just having, crazy heart, crazy durability, a crazy chin. Against someone like Dusko Todorovic, that could potentially even be enough. But I think that Todorovic does win this fight. I think overall, he should just piece Medina up. Maybe he doesn't put Medina out just because, Medina is extremely tough. But I think that over 3 rounds, Todorovic just get this one done. So give me Dusko to win this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Santiago Luna versus Quang Le. And I'm going to go with Santiago Luna here. Once again, he's a 6-0 fighter. Super unproven, super young at 21 years old. Quang Le obviously has the advantage and experience. Does have, a win inside the promotion as well. But overall, man, I just don't think I'm very impressed by a Quang Le. He's coming off that win to Gaston Bolaños, who himself, I just think has a real big hole in the grappling side of his game, which is what Quang Le was able to kind of, take advantage of and exploit in that matchup. Santiago Luna, the tape on him is obviously, very limited, and his opponents have been, kind of, fairly low level, but at the same time, he thrives in a brawl. He has insane heart. He's shown to kind of have, parts of his ground game kind of real good as well. He can strike as well. He's probably the better striker here against Quang Le in this matchup. So I think that overall, I'm looking at the fight against Long Xiao for Quang Le, where Long Xiao just kind of started screaming in his face, standing on business, and just like winging shots towards him. I think that Santiago Luna is just kind of more of a dog than Quang Le. So overall, I'm going with Santiago Luna here. I think that, he has kind of decent skill so far in the tape that I have seen. It is, like I said, unproven against lower level opposition, and he is only 21 years old. So it is something to kind of note. But in general, he's done what he's supposed to do. And, Quang Le, I've just seen him not look super hot in general. So give me Santiago Luna. I think that if he stands on business, makes the fight like a Long Xiao type of fight, which I think he can, I think get Quang Le out of there. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Alexander Hernandez versus Diego Ferreira. And I'm going to go Diego Ferreira here to beat Alexander Hernandez. I know Hernandez is on a 3-fight win streak. He's kind of putting stuff together. That last fight against Chase Hooper, I think that, Hooper just looked like super off rhythm, super flat-footed. Just did not look real good in that matchup at all. He does land that kind of flash knockout on Chase Hooper in the first round. Prior to that, he has that unanimous decision win over Kurt Holloway, which was a very close fight in my opinion. Prior to that, he had that split decision win against Austin Hubbard. So, this is a 3-fight win streak that I think is just fairly weak. I mean, the Hooper win obviously is good, but like I said, Hooper just did not look himself in that fight. And then Diego Ferreira, he's coming off that loss to Grant Dawson. Prior to that, beats Mateusz Rebecki. Prior to that, beats Michael Johnson. And I just think in general, Diego Ferreira just, he has a higher level resume. He's shown higher levels of skill so far in his career. I know he's 40 years old coming to this, but I think that, he can land something big. Overall, I see this fight just kind of turning into a brawl. I think that this fight does end in a knockout, and I think that, Diego Ferreira lands something big on Alexander Hernandez, kind of puts him out in this fight. So I think that the grappling of these two kind of cancels out. I don't see Alexander Hernandez really just like fully pushing like a full grappling pace on Diego Ferreira here. And I think that it's going to go turn into a brawl and Ferreira will land big. So give me Diego Ferreira by knockout. I think he has a little bit more to give, before his career ends. And let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we have Kelvin Gastelum versus Dustin Stoltzfus. And I'm going to go with another underdog in this matchup. I'm going to go with Dustin Stoltzfus to beat Kelvin Gastelum by decision. I think that, Dustin Stoltzfus has actually really impressed me with his aggression, with his power, also with his wrestling early in fights. I think that he's kind of a lock to pick up round 1 in this matchup of 3 rounds against Kelvin Gastelum. Overall, Dustin Stoltzfus actually just is a fighter that looks good until he doesn't. And it's happened a couple times. He's beaten Punahele Soriano. Then he loses in the first round to Bruno Ferreira. But, he was actually just kind of dominating that first round with Bruno Ferreira until, Ferreira just goes, lands a spinning elbow, knocks him out. He knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault in the first round. He loses a decision to Ruzaboyev, who's a very strong opponent. And, he kind of just almost gets Ruzaboyev out of there in the first round. Ruzaboyev kind of, reels that fight back in, wins rounds 2 and 3 to get the one done on the cards. But overall, I think that, Stoltzfus' durability has kind of been the problem, and Kelvin Gastelum just does not pose that type of danger threat. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum is talented. He has good boxing, but overall, I don't see, I think Stoltzfus can potentially implement some level of ground game and takedowns against Gastelum here. I think overall, he's going to be more dangerous than Gastelum. Gastelum obviously has that, crazy chin. So he's not going to put Gastelum away on the feet. But I think that, first round, he's definitely going to just outdo Kelvin Gastelum in all areas. Can he just kind of lock in and do that for another round? I definitely think he can. I think that this is going to be like a too little, too late scenario from Kelvin Gastelum. I think Stoltzfus will probably fade at some point. But overall, he's not going to get finished by Kelvin Gastelum. And I think that in general, he's just going to do enough. He's locked to win round 1. I think he'll probably pick up that second round as well. At, plus 200 odds, I got action on Stoltzfus. I think, it's a pretty good spot for him. I think that Kelvin Gastelum just kind of doesn't care anymore. That's just my thoughts on the process. So give me Dustin Stoltzfus here to get this one done by decision. Let's move on to the next matchup. Up next, we got Jared Gordon versus Rafa Garcia, and I'm going to go with Jared Gordon to win this one. I'm fairly confident that he kind of just has Rafa Garcia covered in, most aspects. Gordon is definitely the better striker here. He's going to out-volume, he's going to outpace, he's going to outland Rafa Garcia on the feet. Garcia's best bet is to get this fight to the ground, but I think that they're fairly, equal when it comes to the wrestling, when it comes to the grappling. Garcia is going to want to push that, obviously, but I think that Gordon should be able to stuff majority of the takedowns. In scrambles, it should be, fairly 50-50. But in general, Gordon should just stuff the takedown, get it back standing, and just, keep this fight in a striking kind of matchup. So give me Jared Gordon. I think he has the tools to get this one done, wherever this fight kind of goes. I don't think that Garcia is really going to be able to impose any part of his game plan for too long against Jared Gordon. So I got Gordon to win this one. I think he has most bases covered. Let's move on to the co-main event. All right, in the co-main event, we got Rob Font versus David Martinez. And, I'm going to go with Rob Font here. This is an interesting matchup just because, I've been fading Font a lot recently, and he's burned me a couple times now. He burned me against Kyler Phillips. He burned me against John Matsumoto. And, maybe now I'm just kind of afraid to picking against Rob Font, but I'm going to go with Rob Font here. I think that David Martinez, he has looked pretty talented, but he was initially supposed to fight Quang Lee in this matchup, and this is an insane level up in competition from Quang Lee to Rob Font. I think that, Rob Font in a matchup that, is going to be purely striking. I mean, David Martinez is not taking Rob Font down. He's not going to want to do that. This is going to be a pure 3-round striking match. I think Rob Font is still very dangerous in a pure striking match for 3 rounds. Very hard to keep up with. He has a sneaky 4-inch reach advantage here, which, doesn't sound too crazy, but with Rob Font having, a very solid jab, establishing it really well, that could play a big role in here as well. So he's a vet. He's got some clear advantages here. I think that, him with that jab could potentially just stifle David Martinez. Is going to have to come inside. Martinez is definitely going to be quicker, though. Martinez is very quick. He has, good footwork as well. So this is going to be a tough fight. I think that, Font is going to have to kind of go tooth and nail with David Martinez for all 3 rounds. But I think that, at the end of the day, Rob Font, never been knocked out, has that jab, has that sneaky advantage, definitely has all the experience on his side. So overall, I think that he's going to be able to get this one done on the cards. Give me Rob Font. I don't know if I'm going to play this just yet, but in general, I faded Rob Font a lot as of late. This is my, me picking him now. Hopefully he doesn't let me down. If he does, then it's fuck Rob Font forever. So give me Rob Font to get this one done. Let's move on to the main event. All right, we got Diego Lopes versus Jean Silva in the main event. This is a great matchup and, definitely very important for that featherweight division. You can see Jean Silva potentially eyeing a title shot here if he does get this one done. I think he's more deserving than Lerone Murphy if he does get this one done. And in general, I think that he will. I'm picking Jean Silva to beat Diego Lopes. Silva's just very explosive and very, very sharp on the feet. He's got great footwork. He's extremely quick. And Diego Lopes, not the best striker. His best bet is, the jiu-jitsu in this fight. I just don't think that he's going to dictate where this fight goes. I think Jean Silva's, takedown defense is strong. I think that Diego Lopes just won't be able to kind of get this fight into his realm to kind of work his jiu-jitsu. And in the striking, Diego Lopes is just kind of a marauder. He's going to come forward. He's going to eat a lot. He's going to throw a lot as well. And I don't think you can kind of fight that kind of style against a Jean Silva. If you're eating a lot of Jean Silva's punches, things are going to get, fairly rough, fairly quick. And Silva, looks super durable so far. I actually think that this fight is going to go 5 rounds just because Diego Lopes also has just a solid chin. And I fear that this could potentially look like a Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson type of situation. Jean Silva being Justin Gaethje and Diego Lopes being Tony Ferguson, where this is just like a 5-round batter fest of, Jean Silva just being sharp. Diego Lopes kind of entering recklessly, eating a shit ton of punches always. Maybe he lands 1 or 2, but, Jean Silva being super sharp, putting an absolute beating on a very strong chin to Diego Lopes. and over 5 rounds, it might just look a little bit sad. I think Lopes is in for a long night, and, I think he's taking a shit ton of damage in this fight against Jean Silva. So give me, Jean Silva to get this one done. Diego's tough, so maybe he does find the knockout over, an accumulation, but I could also see this one go to the cards, in a really bloody decision. So I'm going to go with Jean Silva, and that does it for all the picks and predictions for Noche UFC. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you did enjoy the picks and predictions, definitely hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. We drop these every single week. We've been absolutely cooking. If you want to see the actual bets that we place every single week, check out betkopicks.com. For $20, you can see our slips, the amount we're placing, what time we place them, and what book we place them on for every single fight card. We're absolutely killing it this year. We're up units. We're up units last year as well. So check us out for $20 a month on betkopicks.com. And overall, good luck to everyone on their bets for Noche UFC.